Hello and welcome to this presentation. I am Maleesha Perera, fourth year student from Faculty of Communication and Business Studies and the Department of Languages and Communication Studies, Trincomalee Campus, Eastern University of Sri Lanka. Before beginning this session, I wish to deliver my sincere gratitudes to Dr. Rohan Sawarimuthu, Department Head of the Information and Technology, Senior Lecturer, Department of Languages and Communication Studies, Faculty of Communication and Business Studies at Trincomalee Campus, Eastern University of Sri Lanka. In this 1 hour presentation, I hope enrich your knowledge. Then I will move to the presentation. Today, my presentation topic is a critical essay on From Emily Dickinson by Tate. Let's move to the substance. From the very beginning, I'm going to talk about who is the author of this essay, and then From Emily Dickinson by Tate, what is this essay about, and who is Emily Dickinson, then themes in Tate's analysis, and Puritan culture and Dickinson's stylistic choices. Last but not least, conclusion. Then let's move to the author of this essay. The author of this essay is Tate. Tate was an... Can you all see my presentation? Rishabda?
Yeah, now I can see. I think.
Okay, now we are in the author of the essay, Tate. Please move to the next slide. Yeah. And Tate was an influential American poet, essayist, critic, best known for his role in the Southern agrarian movement and his contribution to new criticism. His full name is John Ollie Allen Tate. Tate's literary career was marked by a deep engagement with themes of Southern identity, tradition, and history. As a critic, he was noted for his inclusive analysis and his emphasis on close of reading text, poems, and a hallmark of new criticism. Let me say about what is new criticism. New criticism, the literary theory movement to which Tate belonged to, focused on the text itself as the primary source of meaning and achieving historical, biographical, and cultural context in favor of close reading and textual analysis. Next, move to the From Emily Dickinson by Tate. May I say about overview of the essay? Tate's essay From Emily Dickinson is a critical examination of the work of Emily Dickinson, one of America's most energetic and celebrated poets. In this essay, Tate delves into the thematic depth and stylistic innovations of Dickinson's poetry, highlighting her engagement with themes such as isolation, death, nature, sublime, and the influence of Puritan culture. Next, move to who is Emily Dickinson. You may have an curiosity, who is Emily Dickinson? Why Tate criticized her poems? So Tate's criticized an essay on From Emily Dickinson. Emily Dickinson, also known as Emily Elizabeth Dickinson. She was an American poet best known for her themes, writing style, and she had bold characters in her poetry. She was born on December 10th in 1830 and died on May 15th, 1886. In her lifetime, she wrote many wonderful poems with divergent themes and unconventional writing styles. Almost every poem of this great person has been read all over the world and criticized by students of literature, authors, and famous poets. Emily Dickinson, known for her sometimes sad, reserved nature looking back on her childhood because she had never ever had any happy childhood in her lifestyle. She described herself as a mourner among the children. And she grew up in Amherst, and her grandfather helped found Amherst College. Her father was a lawyer, and a well-known family she had. She had a well-known family. She graduated from Amherst Academy, began an all-female seminary, but came home after 1 year because of her bad health, and she refused to officially join the congregational church. Though committed to her faith, she was not comfortable conforming to the expectation of institutional religion. She was an extremely skillful gardener and uh, pianist, and also uh, this love of nature shows up her poems through her poems. And when we talk about Emily Dickinson's marriage life, love life, she was engaged to a man named George while in college. But her father made it her relationship end. Some scholars believe it was because he was poor. Recently discovered, uh, she carried a secret communication with George even into the first years of her official marriage. The heartbreak of this experience is thought to have inspired many of poems about love. And later in life, she was a widower, and many of her poems address death because she lost many friends and family members in her life and constantly questioned the nature of morality. Later in life, she withdrew from social life and lived in isolation, rarely leaving her room and choosing to communicate with through letters or sometimes even talking to visitors through her bedroom door. Um, uh, and a later time in her life, she was known for only wearing white dresses like a ghost. She earned the following nicknames like the Myth of Amherst and the Nun of Amherst. But during this sad, embarrassed life, she wrote more than 1,000 poems, nearly 1,800 poems, but only seven were published. She was alive. And she rewrote clean copies of all her poems and carefully bundled them into manuscripts. And she died at 56 in 1886. And her sister Lavinia began publishing her poems. Uh, Mostly, she has main characteristics in her poetry. Uh, these themes will can all can see in the next slide. Unconventional themes and varied moods, shortness and conscience, untitled poems, individualism, transcendentalism, and unbiased opinions, mysticism and spiritualism, realism and symbolism. As you can, she is a very different woman in that time period. You can see how her face looked like. She has a very bold characteristics. Because of this characteristic, uh, this, these characteristics were influenced to her work. Next, we move to the essay from Emily Dickinson by Alan Tate. Tate criticized her poems through his opinions and checked about transcendentalism and mysticism and why Puritan culture influenced to these poems likewise. And Tate highlights the first theme is, let's move to the next slide, nature and the self. Tate highlights Dickinson's engagement with transcendental and mystical themes, exploring the boundaries between life, death, and the afterlife. Her poem often delve into the nature of existence and the human soul. As you already can know, I always mention that she had a very deadly life. It was very isolated and very bored life. Therefore, her poem often deal with nature of existence and human soul. She wants to again, die again and again. And transcendentalism, a philosophical movement that emerged in the 19th century, emphasized the inherent goodness of people and nature, the importance of individual intuition, and the connection between the human soul and divine. Emily Dickinson's poetry often reflects these principles as she frequently explores the relationship between self and the nature. As I mentioned, she was a very nature lover, but she was very isolated. So Tate highlights Dickinson's ability to find profound meaning in natural elements. Uh, you can see the example she used. um, a bird comes down the walk. He did not know I saw. And also, for instance, a light exists in spring. Dickinson's capture the transcendental experience of witnessing a unique moment. And while Puritans often viewed nature as a manifestation of God's creation, Dickinson's poetry scenes with profound spiritual extensional significance. Tate notes that Dickinson's keen observation of the natural world often serve as metaphors for larger theological and philosophical questions. A bird came down the work. The detailed depiction of the bird actions can be seen as an exploration of the divine order and the beauty of God's creation. And next theme is isolation and solitude. Emily Dickinson's sense of isolation and solitude can be tracked back to the Puritan emphasis on individual and the personal relationship with God. Puritan culture often encouraged a life of reflection and self-examination away from worldly distractions. So, Emily Dickinson is also known as a totally world distracted person. Tate observed that Dickinson's poetry frequently reflects her reclusive lifestyle and her nature, traits that were like in I'm Nobody, Who Are You? Dickinson's playful yet an acknowledge of her outsider status can be seen as a reflection of the Puritan value of humility and the avoidance of vanity. Dickinson's, as I told you earlier, Dickinson experienced significant personal loss throughout her life, including her deaths of loved ones, and also she had a bad health situation. These experiences of grief and loss are reflected in her poetry, contributing to overall sad tone. And the next theme is death and immortality. The Puritan preoccupation with death and the afterlife significantly influences in Dickinson's poetry. As highlighted by Tate, Puritans believed in the ever present possibility of death and the importance of preparing one's soul for the afterlife. This is profoundly and finely evident in Dickinson's mortality and immortality. In here, you can see the example, because I couldn't stop for death. She personifies death in a manner that is both familiar and cannot ignore, reflecting the Puritan acceptance of death as a part of God's plan. Uh, Next, we are going to talk about Puritan culture and Dickinson's stylistic choices. As you know, Puritanism is a main topic and the state in American literature. Puritanism, a religious reform movement originating in the late 16th and 17th centuries, and played a vital role in shaping American culture and the spiritual life. Puritans emphasized personal piety, a strict moral code, and the belief in predestination. These values influenced a culture of deep introspection and where individuals continuously examine their own spiritual state and moral standing. Next, Tate's interpretation. Uh, Next slide, please. Style and form, when we talk about the style and form that Emily Dickinson used, according to Tate's, Dickinson's innovative use of language and form can be seen as a response to the Puritan plain style, which valued clarity and simplicity. While Dickinson adhered to some aspects of the style, she also put dashes and always put questions mark to uh, represent isolated and spiritual life and questioning about death and her life. Then use of symbolism. Tate analyzes Dickinson's use of symbolism and metaphors, personifications, how she imbues ordinary objects and experiences with deeper meanings. She always used punctuations and capitalizations, and Dickinson's distinctive use of punctuation, especially her liberal use of dashes, especially, and her unconventional capitalization are discussed as tools that added to complexity of her work. Next, next slide. Structure and techniques and innovative use of form and Dickinson's unconventional use of prime and meter is a significant point of analysis. Tate explores how her slant rhymes, irregular rhythms, and varied the line length contributes to the unique texture of her poetry. As I told, Dickinson's punctuation and capitalization were marked precisely and very profoundly. And the next, literary context and influence. Dickinson's place in American literature. Emily Dickinson was a profound poet during that time period, Puritan culture, and Tate positions Dickinson within the broader tradition of American poetry, discussing her influences and her impact on subsequent generation of poets. And he often contrasts her work with that of her contemporaries of highlights her originality and isolation and independence. Tate believes and Tate delves into Dickinson's reclusive lifestyle and how it may have influential her poetic work. As I told earlier, her entire life was influenced to her poetry. And the next slide is about philosophical and theological upbringings. Puritan time period was full of philosophical and theological upbringings, and it talks about uh, deep engagement with extensional questions and about faith, about doubt, and the nature of reality. And he explores how her poetry often reflects a struggle with religious and philosophical uncertainties. And she always question about what why everything is happened to me, why I sad, why I have to die soon, why my loved ones is dead, and why everything has happened to me, where is God, where is God. She always asked about from poem. And the next slide is emotional and psychological depths. And the Puritan emphasize on personal religious experiences and self-examination is reflected in the emotional and intellectual depths of Dickinson's poetry. Tate notes that her work is characterized by profound emotional honesty and a quest for spiritual understanding. She wants to know what is life, what is death, and why am I sad every time? Why am I mourning every time? In her poem, My Life Closed Twice Before It's Closed, captures the poet's intense engagement with themes of loss, faith, and extensional doubt. She conveys deep and complex feelings in her work, which can often come across as sorrowful and pensive. And her ability to express vulnerability and deep emotions with readers and can evoke feelings of sadness. She never ever um, express happy in her poems. She every time put her sadness, put her loss, put her death, and asking and seeking for death and again after life. And next, we are going to end this presentation. As a conclude, I can say Alan Tate's essay from Emily Dickinson provides a comprehensive analysis of the influence of Puritan culture on Emily Dickinson's poetry. Through themes of isolation, death, nature, and the sublime, Dickinson's work reflects the introspective and spirituality intense nature of her Puritan heritage. Her innovative language and form, emotional intensity, and the paradox of her isolation and connection are all shaped by the cultural context in which she lived and wrote during that time period. Therefore, um, her, he portrays her as a professional thinker and an innovator whose work challenges and inspires until the 21st century. By examining her themes, style, and broader literary significance, Tate describes Dickinson's enduring the impact on American literature. Until now, she is a major character in American literature, and Tate's analysis highlights the profound complexity and significance of Dickens' poetry, revealing as a poet deeply influenced by the spiritual and moral uh, person of Puritanism. So, therefore, I think now you may have a clear idea about why Alan Tate criticized Emily Dickinson's poems, works, and why he put all the thoughts in a critical essay from Emily Dickinson. So, thank you for being with me, and thank you for this opportunity given by Dr. Rohan Savarimuthu. And finally, thank you for your kind cooperation. And I am Maleesha, and have a great day.